It's finally happened. I'm a real boy, a real YouTuber who was invited to PAX East to check out what exactly is coming on the horizon in gaming in general, and in particular, our favorite genre of turn-based strategy and tactics. And yes, there's a reason that there's such a pause between each of those words. My name is Tom, otherwise known as Titanium Legman, and let's talk about not one, not two, but 8 different awesome titles that I saw on the show floor. Hello everyone, if you enjoy what I do, including covering all sorts of gaming news for some of our favorite genres, straight from the show floor live at PAX East. Well, I mean, this video isn't live, but you get what I mean. I was physically there talking to the people. Then a like on this video and a subscription to the channel would be very much appreciated. Thank you so much. This is going to be a little bit of a comprehensive view slash vlog today. Not going to be super YouTuber vloggy, because frankly, that's not my style, and I don't know how the hell to do it. But it wouldn't be a video talking about PAX without showing some of what the trip to PAX entailed. However, the big news for the day is, yes, those 8 different titles that I had the opportunity to check out, get hands-on with, and in some cases, discuss directly with the developers of those titles about what they're making, why they're making it, and just what makes it so damn cool. For the video, we'll be starting off with the general impressions of the con, as it is the first time that I ever had the opportunity to go to it. Then we're going to go through that list of games, discuss everything that I experienced in the end, and get your guys' impressions about what exactly it is that I'm showing you here today. If there's a particular section of the video that you do want to jump to, whether it be the impressions, the game list in general, a particular game, there will always be timestamps and chapters in the description and the play bar of the video so you can get to exactly what you want to see. With that said, what are my impressions of the con? I've wanted to go to a PAX for basically as long as it's existed and as long as I was aware of it, but I've never really been in a position, either monetarily, time-wise, or whatever, to justify doing so until I was recently able to get a media badge for PAX East 2026. As such, myself and my partner Jane flew up to Boston and see exactly what the fuss was about and if it was going to live up to the expectations. And I'm happy to tell you, if you've ever been curious about going, it absolutely does. Not only do you have all of the trappings of a normal convention experience with different panels, guests, signings, cosplays, all the things that makes that type of experience fun, you also have the absolutely ludicrously massive show floor where you've got tons of different games, merch, tabletop stuff, student groups showing off their projects, whether it be games or accessibility features. There was an air of excitement at PAX East that I haven't felt at a convention scene in a very long time, and I've gone to quite a few of them. I think largely because the focus was on seeing what's new and exciting and sharing in that love of something that we can all actually see physically together, not just people going around and admiring each other's cosplays and going to panels, which can be fun in its own right, but there's more of a focus to PAX that made it feel a little bit more homey and together, like everyone is there for the same reason and can enjoy it together. I in particular loved seeing just how many smaller indie projects there were at PAX East. There was a couple of the major big booths, like Nintendo had a big showing for Pokemon Pocopia and Champions and some of their other projects that they had going on, but for the most part, you had smaller solo devs or small teams showing off really creative and impassioned projects that I may never have heard of if I wasn't physically at the location, and that's the type of stuff that I'm most excited to share with you all. That said, just having the experience of walking around, approaching a booth, and immediately having someone come up to you and say like, hey, here's this game, do you want to hear the pitch? And be like, yeah, tell me about it, it's why I'm here, and getting the whole spiel, being able to get in line, get hands-on with it for anywhere from 5 minutes to a half hour, and walk away with a new experience and something to be potentially interested in the future was super cool, and it absolutely has me hyped to go back to PAX East, and hopefully maybe to other PAXs as well. It's kind of what I always imagined going to E3 would be like, although admittedly probably a little bit smaller than that, and it was an absolutely lovely experience, to say nothing of being able to be in Boston near the waterfront, checking out all of the historic buildings, lovely restaurants and pubs, and general positive atmosphere that was very nice to see in a big city like that. Definitely a place I would love to go back to again, just on its own to see the sights, let alone go for PAX. But that's enough about the con in general. I'm sure what the majority of you are here for is the games themselves, and that's exactly what we're going to be talking about next. I want to make it clear, some of these games I will be giving dedicated videos over the next week or two, as there is a lot to talk about here, whereas others are still very early development, don't quite have as many details available, or don't even have a public demo yet, so there's not as much to discuss compared to the general overview that we'll be doing here. So I'll call out what I'm going to be doing with each one going forward, but in this video, I'm just going to give you the broad strokes so you can get an idea of what it is that we're working with. So with that said, Tiny Metal 2. There's been a slew of new upcoming Advance Wars likes, shall we say, because I mean, if Intelligent Systems isn't going to do it, then obviously there's a bunch of people out there who are going to be like, fine, we'll do it ourselves, because Advance Wars has a very dedicated, very passionate fan base. Of all of those that I've seen thus far, some have been fine, some have been not so fine, but Tiny Metal 2 is by far looking the most impressive, which I guess makes sense since it is a sequel. Now, I never played Tiny Metal 1, but I am very impressed by what I got to play of Tiny Metal 2. When I say it's an Advance Wars like, that's 100% what it is. If you're familiar at all with Advance Wars, you will know exactly what's going on here, but this is a title that has a lot of different evolutions of that formula that promise to make it, at least on its face, very interesting. Lots of new different unit types, such as mecha, a major focus on co-op versus gameplay, both in skirmishes and the upcoming campaign mode, as far as I would expect. A large array of different commanding officers that all have their own unique traits, special abilities, and the like. And most interestingly, a radar unit that allows you to detect enemies in the fog of war, but not let you know what they are, but only in a certain radius. And of course, if this gets destroyed, that is a major problem for you. From a gameplay standpoint, Tiny Metal 2 feels very snappy and interesting. I do enjoy that you have a little bit more tactical flexibility in terms of having that radar available to you, and the fact that you're going to have to work together with a teammate to defeat the enemy is going to make things very interesting indeed. One of the most notable things about the game, however, is the very high production quality of the graphics and the character designs. This is absolutely a modern Advance Wars like, and you have very nice, high quality, and kind of dynamic and intense battle animations, character animations, and displays for the maps, compared to pretty much anything else that we've seen in this subgenre thus far. I do have one gripe in that you don't actually see the units lined up against each other. Instead, units will roll up, they'll fire off their attack, very impressive, very flashy, very high quality, but then you get a hard cut to a black screen and then jump to the enemy squad taking that hit. I'm personally not a huge fan of that myself. I don't know how you guys are going to feel about it. I'm sure it's something that you can get used to, but they definitely need to cut down on some of the loading times in between those animations to make the game flow a little bit better. However, I feel like if they can get that squared away, there's going to be a lot to enjoy here from a tactical standpoint once the full release comes sometime in the future. Next up, we have Canvas City, probably one of the more unique, not the only unique, but more unique titles that I saw at PAX East, that's being made by a little outfit, Disc 2 Games. This one is more of an XCOM or Fire Emblem-like, but with an interesting twist of introducing some more Splatoon or Jet Set Radio vibes even, with a small crew of skaters, dancers, and graffiti artists facing off against rival crews in a beleaguered, sort of post-corporate city. As part of that, you are going to be doing the things that you would expect, such as grinding and doing tricks, Tony Hawk style, tagging different sections of the map to make it your territory and score points, and then, of course, doing battle with opponents as well, but less with, like, swords and bullets and lasers, and more with, like, dance moves or spraying them in the face with your paint, which would definitely be unpleasant, but certainly less deadly than a lot of the things that we see in the turn-based tactics genre. As you can imagine, your crew does comprise an eclectic cast of various different rocker punks and break dancers and brooding artists and the like, and the rival gangs are all quirky mini-boss squads in their own right. There's a major focus on momentum, building up speed, comboing together different moves, and using ramps or jumps to get even more actions and move around the map very quickly, and I imagine once the full release comes, there will be a lot of opportunities to do some pretty crazy combos as you get further down the line and upgrade your characters more. This is a very early title, so there's no active demo at this time or anything along those lines, and I can tell from the demo that I played that there is a lot of work to be done, but it's a unique concept, it's an interesting setting, and a fun way to do some new mechanics in a turn-based tactics style, so I'm very curious to see what else the team can do as they develop this one into the future. Moving on from a very non-traditional for the genre setting and style of combat to a very traditional genre and style of combat, I finally had the chance to put hands on Lost Eidolons Veil of the Witch. Now this one, unlike everything else that we're going to talk about today, did already release. It came out in the tail end of 2025, but due to extenuating circumstances going on in my life, I had not had the opportunity to check it out just yet, and I appreciated having the chance to do so here. Even when it was first announced, Lost Eidolons Veil of the Witch very much grabbed me from a visual standpoint, and I liked everything that I'd heard about it as a sort of roguelite, turn-based Fire Emblem style game in a post-apocalyptic setting with a lot of raising of zombies and interesting character classes, the ability to get different randomized upgrades, all the normal roguelite stuff mixed with the dark fantasy settings that I'm a huge fan of. And once I got hands-on with it, that is exactly what it was, and I very much enjoyed it. There's a good chance that at least some of you watching this video do have a lot of time in Lost Eidolons Veil of the Witch at this point, but for those of you who do not, I definitely enjoyed what I was able to play of it. The combat is very punchy and impactful. There's already a lot of different weapons and abilities you're going to be able to use, with each character even having multiple different weapon sets. That makes classes very interesting. For example, I had like a summoner necromancer who could switch from her magic book to a straight up just axe and shield and start bashing people. It was so cool. And in the demo version that I was playing, there were already a lot of different characters that were available to take on different runs as you progress through the various different roguelite modes. I'm curious about the story, very interested to see how these characters and classes evolve over time, especially what types of crazy abilities you're going to be able to get as you unlock different stuff in different paths. Suffice to say, Lost Eidolons Veil of the Witch is absolutely going to be one that I check out more in depth very soon. If you haven't already, even just based on the demo, I would say this is one that probably deserves a second look. For this next title, I think a lot of you are going to be very excited to hear that I had some time with it. This is Brigandine Abyss. Yes, the surprise new Brigandine release that was announced not all that long ago was at PAX East with a playable demo, and I gotta say, even though I've never played a Brigandine game before, I was very much enjoying my time with Abyss. I only got about 30 minutes with it, but the battle that I was in was pretty intense, with 3 different playable factions up against a large enemy army, a huge array of different monsters with different abilities and skills that I had to learn, and whether it was just for the demo or not, I'm not sure, but the game did not hold back. I was getting slaughtered in different sections of that map, and if I'd had enough time, I'm sure I would have been able to pull out a W, but it was not going smoothly, I'll tell you that much, which is obviously for me very exciting. I learned a lot more about how exactly the systems of the game are going to work. I do have a bunch of screenshots and pictures and footage, some of which you are seeing now, so we're going to deep dive on this one later once I can get all of my thoughts together on it. But as it stands, I'm very excited about the wide range of options that are available to you. I'm curious about how all of the city building and diplomacy systems and politicking will work. I didn't get to see any of that in this demo, but just the raw gameplay feel was very fun. I'm very excited to be able to build my squads of monsters that are suited to different types of heroes. All of the art was absolutely phenomenal. The animations were a ton of fun. Based on what I saw at PAX, I think Brigandine Abyss is absolutely going to deliver a fun tactical experience, and it's made me more interested to go back and check out the other entries in the series as well. Whether you're an old fan of the franchise or looking to jump in alongside me and other new tactics fans, keep an eye on this one. They're definitely cooking. Next up, we have our second very unique, very interesting turn-based tactics title with Void Odyssey, which, believe it or not, is kind of a combination of like Outer Wilds or Kerbal Space Program with an XCOM style tactics shooter, which is not something I ever would have expected to say, and for a lot of fans of this channel, probably has your ears perked up. So what is it? There's 2 very distinct sides of Void Odyssey, to the point that there was actually 2 separate demos for it at the booth at PAX. On one side, you're going to be building and flying in very realistic physics style a ship through space to land on different planetoids, avoid obstacles and other hostile ships, and navigate around at least one, if not more, systems to progress through the story, find upgrades, and continue to build your crew. You're not running around a world map here. No. You need to be very carefully navigating around, and as you'll be able to see from some of the footage that I have here, I was not very good at it. I did not actually successfully land on a planet once, but I've also never been someone who's been particularly good at Kerbal Space Program. The slightly more forgiving Outer Wilds feel of spaceflight is definitely more my jam. That said, it was very fun being able to just take off of a planet and fly around in Void Odyssey, and I can only imagine what they're going to be able to do with those systems as the game gets developed further. As far as the tactics gameplay, it's more standard. It's a hex-based tactics title instead of a grid-based one, but as you get into combat when you're running around exploring any given world, you will find very quickly that you're using cover, have your normal shots, your stronger abilities that have cooldowns, a variety of different enemies with strengths and weaknesses, all the standard fare. However, you encounter them by running around almost like Super Mario Galaxy-esque little planets, where you're encouraged to explore, gather minerals, open locked doors, solve puzzles, and to generally make your way through what seems like it's going to be a fairly wide array and diverse set of planets based on just the little bit I was able to see as I was gallivanting around in my ship later on in the demo. No release date or active public demo for this one at the moment, but just based on its unique combination of gameplay mechanics alone, I would definitely keep an eye on this one. There's a lot of passion behind it based on my discussion with the devs. There's a lot of influence from things like Final Fantasy Tactics and Fire Emblem and the like, but also an interest in blending it into something new, which I'm always happy to see. As we do learn more information about Void Odyssey, as it hopefully gets closer to release, I'll be more than happy to put out a much more comprehensive overview of it, especially once we get a public demo. We're coming up on the last big 3 here. All of these are ones that are going to be getting dedicated videos unto their own right as well, because they do have a lot to discuss. And the next one is not actually a turn-based tactics title in the traditional sense, but one that I think is going to resonate with many of you regardless. It is Secret of Weepstone. For my Return of the Obra Dinn fans, you're immediately going to see a very familiar art style. I don't know what the proper description, voxel? I'm not sure, but the look is very immediately reminiscent of Return of the Obra Dinn. And actually, in discussing the game with lead developer Sean, he confirmed that is exactly where his inspiration for that art style came from. In Secret of Weepstone, you're going to be playing through a very traditional, like, early second-ish edition D&D game where you, as a small party of very much under-equipped and underprepared adventurers, dive into the titular Deepstone to figure out what is driving the Lord of the Land seemingly mad and what secrets were hidden there by his late father, a marauding warlord who for some reason decided to settle in the region. As such, you're going to have a lot of brutal combat and dungeon exploration in a very classic D&D style, traversing through hallways, opening locked doors, solving puzzles, and getting jumped by goblins, kobolds, skeletons, everything you would normally expect. Combat progresses with a D20 system with your standard array of normal attacks, ranged attacks, some spells, and you have inventory systems akin to ARPGs like Diablo. It makes for a very interesting and very immersive experience right off the cuff. You even have the little Tunic-esque opening of the game book to really get you into the feel of the thing as the campaign begins. There is a publicly available demo and a tentative release date of 2026 for Secret of Weepstone. I definitely am going to be talking about this one more very soon, but suffice to say, if you enjoy D&D, dungeon delving, brutal dark fantasy combat, permadeath, or the like, this is going to be one turn-based RPG you're going to want to keep your eye on. We're down to the last 2 games we're going to be discussing today, my friends, and I saved my 2 personal favorites for last, as you might expect. First off, we're going to be talking about Mech Tech by Sam Makes Games, and this is the only real-time strategy title on the list. But don't get me wrong, it is still very strategic and in a lot of ways very tactical due to the way that the game is set up. Mech Tech asked the question, what if you took a game like Advance Wars and made it a real-time strategy title, with all the bells and whistles that you would expect from that? A fully fleshed out roguelite campaign, multiplayer, both online and couch co-op for 4 to 8 players, a slew of unlockable commanding units, etc. However, the twist here, beyond it just being a real-time strategy game, is that you have a dual action role. Not only are you the commanding officer who's putting down units, navigating the battlefield, and setting up an army to be able to conquer your opponent, you're also an actual physical unit on the field, piloting around your very own mech that, depending on which pilot you choose, will have different weapons and special abilities to try and swing the tide in your favor. In the campaign, you proceed across multiple maps and scaling difficulty missions, many of which have their own unique gimmicks, unlocking new cards to build out a deck of deployable units as you go, starting with basic infantry and mech troopers, like, with rocket launchers and things, all the way up to automated drones, factories that'll automatically spawn units for you, Doombas that'll suck up your opponent and deal a bunch of damage to them when it finally explodes, and a whole lot more, as well as being able to find various different weapons and upgrades on the battlefield or between missions to make certain types of units stronger, give your own mech different types of abilities, and eventually unlock more commanders that you'll be able to choose from. There's boss fights, banging music, and the difficulty does scale up pretty well, especially as you start having not only stronger units on your side, but the enemy's team as well. When you're playing with an ally, you'll rapidly alternate between who is spawning units and who is on the battlefield, as someone needs to be in your command tank to be able to actually put things down and use the energy and cards that you've built up, while you do want someone who can manually run around and intercept dangerous enemy units that you maybe don't have the energy or the cards to spawn counters for. Once you take too much damage, you swap out, you jump in the tank, your buddy jumps out, and then they take on the role of actual battlefield commander while you continue to spawn new units and build up your strategy. This makes for a very satisfying gameplay loop as far as the campaign is concerned, but I'd argue where Mech Tech really begins to shine with some of these mechanics is when you start getting into the multiplayer. I had the chance to sit down at PAX East with a group of my friends, play 4-player 2v2 versus, and it was an absolute blast for the couple of rounds we were able to get in. Trying to navigate not only what your tactical approach is going to be with your teammate, but counter on the fly what it is your opponents are doing, especially depending on what decks people choose to build before the match, can make for a very hectic and very funny experience. We were all cracking up while we were playing, and all the people who were spectating us were also starting to lose it, because it was just so fun to see as everyone was beginning to panic but also lock in simultaneously while we were trying to figure out how we could get one up on each other. It's rare today to see a game that is going to give not only a single-player campaign experience, but a great couch co-op or like Discord call with your buddies on game night type of experience in one package, but Mech Tech looks like it's absolutely set up to deliver that, especially since it has a lot of different fun references to other games that people who like this type of genre and style will probably know. Advanced Wars, StarCraft, Starship Troopers, Alien, the list goes on. I will be doing a full video breakdown and discussion of Mech Tech at a later date, including segments of an interview that I'm going to be doing with Sam of Sam Makes Games himself. Sam is a great dude. I had the opportunity to first meet him at Too Many Games last year, where I tried out Mech Tech for the first time, and I'm very eager to dive a lot deeper into what this game offers. I think it's really going to be an indie banger once it finally does launch. And now, speaking of indie games that are going to be absolute bangers once they launch, we have to talk about what is, to me, the star of the tactics space at PAX East this year, something I was not expecting to see and which absolutely blew me away. It's Never's End. And the best way that I can think to describe it would be if you took Final Fantasy Tactics and Disgaea, blended them together, and then added a sprinkling of immersive sim on top of it. In Never's End, you take on the role of a necromancer who is actually possessing the townsfolk who are left in a world that is quickly collapsing to an ongoing apocalypse. In doing so, you'll have your normal array of different types of weapons and abilities that you would expect, though not specifically classes from what I've seen in the combat demo that I was able to play at PAX. But you will have various different maces, swords, clubs, sickles, rakes, bats, pieces of wood, basically anything and everything that people can draw to hand to try and defend themselves from whatever horrors happen to be descending upon them. You'll equip different types of armors, various weapons and armors will have effective and ineffective counters to each other, all standard stuff, right? However, where Never's End starts to get very interesting is in how it utilizes magic and the environment around you. This is where the ImSim and the Disgaea elements sort of come into play. There's a major focus on manipulating where your party and where the enemy party is located at any given time. You can do this by just pushing something into a wall to stun it, into an enemy to deal damage to each other, off of a cliff to knock it down, etc. Or you can use other options like long hooked weapons that can yank something towards you or down off of a cliff. You can pick up and throw rocks and skulls if you don't have a ranged attack that can get to an enemy, and a lot of those different throwable items will have their own effects that they deal to the enemy as well. When you get onto magic, this is where things begin to get very interesting, as magic in this game does not seem to be a direct damage option, but more something that is actually going to manipulate the world around you. For example, in the demo, you get access to fire magic, which you would think, okay, you blow stuff up and you burn them, right? You can a little bit, but the major focus is actually drawing heat from the environment to then empower your skills or change the heat in other sections of the environment. By doing so, you can actually create air currents to, again, push the enemy from a distance, create large wind vortexes to suck up groups of enemies and knock them all around into each other. You can use wind to pull fire from torches or bonfires into enemies to light them on fire that way. Or yes, if you spend enough time heating up an enemy, they will just combust, allowing you to deal damage over time there. You can go the reverse as well. You can use your fire magic to drain so much heat from an enemy that they will literally freeze in place, on top of being able to create snow and mist and rain and other environmental effects, all of which also have their own impact on the battlefield and on enemies. If you get wet, it's harder to wield your weapon. It's slipping around in your hands and your accuracy goes down, just as one example. And this is only one of the magic systems that's going to be in the game once it gets its full release. earth, fire, ice, etc. And if just fire magic is going to have that many different potential effects on the battlefield, I can only imagine what you're going to be able to do once you have access to all of the various different elements. And really, that's just the tip of the iceberg for all the different ways you can interact with any given battlefield. I've put about 4 hours into the publicly available combat demo at this point, and there's so much play that you have even just there, with about 7 or 8 different battle maps available to you to play around, experiment, build your units different ways, and approach encounters in completely different ways depending on which actual direction you enter the battlefield from, what skills and abilities you have on hand, and what types of enemies are available. Again, we have great music, a really fun sort of 2.5D, not really like HD 2D style to it. It kind of reminds me of if you like 3Dified or RuneScaped, something like MapleStory. It's a very fun, cute style that lends itself well to the tactics space while still suiting the very dark world that Never's End seems to inhabit. And then of course you do have big boss fights, major encounters, and the like. This one is going to be a ton of fun, and I can't wait to see just how customizable you can get with your party, on top of just how crazy the story and the world winds up being. Look forward to a more comprehensive video discussing the entire demo that was available to us somewhere soon down the line. And that, my friends, is all 8 of the turn-based strategy and tactics games that I saw at PAX East. I do believe I hit everyone that was available, and of course that's to say nothing of all the other awesome games that we saw while we were there. If you haven't had the chance or taken the opportunity to go to PAX East in the past, I highly recommend it if you do find yourself being able to do so. It is gaming nirvana. It is so very fun, and I'm absolutely going to be going back year over year if I am able to. As far as things that we discussed here today, I do want to hear from you though. What are you most interested in seeing more of? Is there a particular game that we talked about today that caught your interest that you're going to be keeping an eye on as we move forward? If you try out any of the demos for these games that are currently available, let me know what your thoughts are based on that. Really, overall, how are we feeling about this renaissance of strategy and tactics that I've been crowing about and is so obviously something that's occurring based on the roster of games we saw today? Let's have a nice little chat about all of it in the comments down below, and do remember, you can find links to all of these games wherever they are currently available. Most of them are on Steam in the description below. I do highly recommend that you go and check them out. Follow, wishlist, show the devs some love, play some demos, and generally have a good time, because these are passion projects made by people who just love what they do. And we want more games like this to come out in the future, and to see these games launch successfully, they're going to be counting on our support. For now, though, I think I'm going to wrap this one up here. My name has been Tom, otherwise known as Titanium Legman. Thank you all so very much for watching, and thank you for continuing to support the channel, because frankly, I probably wouldn't have been able to get to PAX East and see all these games if it wasn't for you guys and how much you've helped me grow this whole thing over the last few years. So thank you for that. Most importantly, though, as always, I hope that you all have a good night. Stay safe and healthy out there, everybody. And remember, be good to each other, y'all. Bye now.